Welcome to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live. Join us tonight as we get more legendary stories from former players and coaches who were in the huddles, on the sidelines, and in the locker rooms, plus insights from those who have covered the game for decades. Check out our 5-star picks of the week with former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, plus our Spotlight on the Positive segment, and hear some good things for a change about what players and teams are doing in their communities. Now here are your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Go get them, guys!
Good evening, folks. How are you? Thank you for being here tonight and joining us on Thursday Night Tailgate, where your favorite NFL legends live. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari here and back for one more time this season. Tonight, we're going to wrap up season number 8 of the show. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I tell you, like we've said all season long, the season seemed to fly by this year, and it's hard to believe that we're gonna put a bow on the 2019 season tonight in our season number 8. But here we are. So I guess this is a good time to reflect back on the season that was. Any thoughts, Bob? Overall, your thoughts on the 2019 season, and maybe stories you're looking forward to hearing over the off season, and some things maybe you're looking ahead to in 2020.
Well, Chris, after you look back on that 2019 season, throw this out there again. You and I had picked the Saints and the Chiefs to be two of the best teams and to go to the Super Bowl. And we came pretty close. I mean, obviously we picked a champion, but it was quite the year. You know, I look back on some of the highlights of things that happened this year and everything, and things that stood out to me. I just jotted a couple things down. Of course, you had the Ravens and their magical season, scoring 539 points. And this is, as far as the AFC is concerned, New England not winning a playoff game, Chris, was just totally news up this way especially. And, of course, KC, again, we thought they'd be good, but I think the two of us would always think, well, would they stay healthy enough? The postseason's a long way from September, and when Mahomes went down, I think we both said, no, you just never know now. Everyone is in it now. And I think what also stood out in the AFC, Chris, was the Cleveland Browns fiasco. I mean, here you had Nick Chubb as the NFL leading rusher, and that team was picked by a few, as you remember, back in September to go to the Super Bowl. And they win 6 games, and they fired their coach already. So that was kind of the AFC for me. I mean, NFC, you had 13-3 teams. That doesn't happen too often. You know, the San Francisco, the Saints, the Packers. That was pretty surprising. Up here in the Northeast, people could not get over how bad the New York Giants were this year, 4-12, and Eli Manning's last season. That was pretty sad to see. But again, back to San Francisco, Chris, I don't think anybody could have thought that they would be that good. Basically the best point differential in the league, at a 169, I believe. And back to the Saints, that was a team we thought would get far, but they're the same Saints teams that the last 3 or 4 years that I had concerns with, Chris, as far as them making a big stop in a big game. That defense just can't do it. And so when you look in the off season, you're going to look to see if the Saints can fix that. You know, if Breeze has one more year left, Chris, they have to do it quick. You know, they have the best receiver in football. Great running back, great quarterback. They have to just tighten up that defense just a little bit. And they might be a favorite next year. I mean, it's very early yet, but we'll see what happens there. Of course, the personnel decisions in the offseason with Rivers and Brady, and of course, Jameis Winston is a guy that just had surgery to correct his eyesight. You wonder if he can get the picks down a little bit. But Bears were supposed to be much better than everybody thought. You know, what's going to happen with the Trubisky era. And, of course, the draft. Joe Burrow, Bengals. There's so much that's going to come up in April, Chris. But, again, next year, Patriots, especially up this way, you know, is it going to be with or without Brady? That's got to be the main story, you know, as the torch been passed between the Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs. That's big news here, of course. And 49ers, Chris, are they going to be that good again? I was just reading today they had 17 free agents. So that's going to be something to see if they can duplicate what they did. And, of course, the Browns, Chris, they have to be better next year. Of course, now they got a new coach. They got a new defensive coordinator. Again, I mentioned they had the best rusher in the National Football League. This team has to make the playoffs next year. That would be my guess. And, of course, I mentioned the Saints already. Breeze's last hurrah, I think, to see what happens in 2020. I would expect them to be very good. And, of course, up here again, the Giants with Joe Judge as the coach, with the Patriots pedigree, and Daniel Jones with seemingly the job is his now. Giants are going to be looked to be majorly improved. So just a few other things, Chris. It's such a great season, such a long season, but you and I were privileged to be part of it for 6 months.
When you look at it from my perspective, Bob, and I want to touch on something that you just said, the Browns have to make the playoffs, right? And I don't know if you mean that in the literal sense of the word or sort of the ridiculous, right? They have to, right? They just have to. You look at a team, you mentioned Nick Chubb and what a great talent that guy is. But now again, they had a coach for one season and he's gone. And the coaching staff, went right along with them. And all of the things that we talked about in the off season, when you bring in an Odell Beckham Jr. and you bring in a whole bunch of free agents and Baker Mayfield being the quarterback and a coach that had zero coaching experience at the head coaching level, that whole thing, as you point out, was a disaster. But do they have to make the playoffs next season? What happens? I mean, how many times can you change? Can you have another one and done coach? I can't imagine that you can. How many times, how many quarterbacks, how many head coaches can you cycle through in Cleveland before you really learn the lesson is more about stability and guys you can depend on and learning the system and having that consistency year over year and that sort of thing? Surely the Cleveland Browns have figured that out. I can't imagine they can continue to not. Right. And then you mentioned Tom Brady and that whole thing with the Patriots is going to be the thing everybody is interested in this off season. Does he come back? Do they stay together, he and Belichick? Or do we get an opportunity to see what they can do when they're apart? I think some of us, and when I say some of us, I got my hand in the air. I'm curious to find out what it would be like if the two of them were apart. And Brady, I can't imagine Brady's got more than a couple of years left that he can continue to play. But what would it be like? Could we see a similar situation like, when Peyton Manning left the Colts and led the Broncos to a Super Bowl title, or when Joe Montana left San Francisco and got the Chiefs at least to the AFC Championship game in '93, got them into the playoffs 2 years in a row. So, yeah, I'm very much interested in seeing that. You mentioned the draft, and I'm curious to find out what happens to Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama, who rolls the dice on him in his hip. Does Joe Burrow end up being the number one overall selection by the Bengals? And if he is, does he flee to Canada or the XFL or whatever so he doesn't have to play for the Bengals? And then, Dallas, right? I mean, obviously, Dak Prescott, are they really going to make him a $30 or $40 million a year quarterback? I mean, his numbers are good. I mean, they were 8-8, but, threw for 4,900 yards and 30 touchdowns last season. His quarterback rating was 10th best in the league, but are they going to pay him to that level? I'm not sure. Dak's good. I don't think he's elite, and I don't think he's worth $30 or $40 million a year. So that situation is something I'm interested in seeing. And then, of course, right, how healthy is Ben Roethlisberger with my Steelers? Can he come back? How early can they find out if they're encouraged by what they see, and if they're not? Keep saying that they're not going to bring in a veteran quarterback, that they're comfortable with Mason Rudolph as the backup quarterback. How comfortable would they be if, and we've talked about it off and on, over the last several weeks, Bob, but, everything comes off and he goes out to throw the ball and that starts grabbing for the elbow, a little tender, a little sore. Do they roll the dice and hope he's healthy enough through the OTAs? Do they let him rest through the OTAs and hope he's back for training camp? If he is, it would have been, almost a year since he threw a meaningful pass. Are they comfortable going into the first couple of weeks with him? And what does that set them up for, in the 2020 season? So a lot of intriguing things to happen in the offseason. There always is. It's the NFL. But I'm interested to see all of those things, Bob.
Yeah, and you said some great things, especially about Prescott, Chris. And, I've always liked the guy. He's been good and on and off the field. But, he's kind of taken a step back for me because, somebody asked him outright, if he's worth $40 million. And he gave a very, very curt kind of cocky response this past week. And, I mean, it's not just what I mean, how much money is enough, number one? I know it's all about ego in the NFL and everything, but you got to think about your teammates and taxes and thresholds and things like that. And these guys don't think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, are they that far away from reality, Chris, with the money? I don't know. That's kind of transcends every sport, but to me, it's very disturbing.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point because, in baseball it's different, right? There's no salary cap. You have to pay a luxury tax and all that sort of thing if you're way above where they set the threshold. But, in the NFL, there's a cap. And, if you start eating up the majority of the cap, what do you got? You're going to be running for your life back there? Who are you going to have to throw the ball to? Who are you going to have to hand it off to? What kind of defense are you going to have? Are you just going to be a really rich guy on a 4-12 team running for your life every weekend? So, yeah, you make a very good point there.
You can go to the best steak restaurant in the world after the game, right, Chris? That's all about what it gets you, right?
Yeah, you can afford to buy the best steak, the best raw meat to stick over your eye and on top of all the broken parts you got because you're running for your life out there.
Rolexes for everybody, right?
That's right. All right, on to tonight's show and who we have joining us. Well, first up tonight, we'll spend some time interviewing Tony Collins. We always pick the games with Tony, but now that the season is over, it gives us time to pick his brain. So we'll do that. Tony will join us about 35 minutes from now. Later on in the hour, we're going to get a return visit from former USC, Atlanta Falcons, and LA Rams running back Lynn Cain. Lynn is now the head coach at LA Southwest Junior College out there in LA. So we'll talk about his new job, plus all three of his former teams. Plus, Bob, I got to spend some time with Lynn and Steve Fracassi last year at some of the Super Bowl events that we had around town here in Atlanta. So a lot of fun listening to those two guys tell stories. So looking forward to maybe catching a few more of those. But Lynn will join us later on. Really looking forward to having him back, too.
Yeah, I love those guys from the 80s, Chris. In 1980, he rushed for over 900 yards and, like you said, a friend and teammate of Barkowski, and some of the names and stories we get from that era are always welcomed and truly a treat on the show. So welcome back, Lynn Cain.
That's right. He'll join us at the top of the next hour. And then we'll round out tonight's show with a return visit from Sirius XM radio host and TNT guest Hall of Famer, Zig Fracassi. And Bob, as you know, Zig is not only a big football guy, but also very into hockey at the NHL level and the college level. And with this week being the 40th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice, which is coming up over the weekend, and want to get his memories of that. And while we're on that subject, Bob and I had the opportunity to talk to Jim Craig earlier this week. You can go online to our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com, or out on our page on Podbean or Spotify, any of your favorite podcasting sites. You're going to be able to find Thursday Night Tailgate. Just search for us. You'll be able to listen to that interview, which was a thrill of a lifetime to get to spend some time with Jim. But Zig coming back, a lot to get into tonight with him, Bob.
Yeah, a TNT Hall of Famer, Chris. We just love Zig. Another guy that's joined us on the TV side also, and his insight. He's so thankful to come on, and he lends such great insight, and been on an awful lot, and he just keeps coming back. So just love the man, and I'm glad he's here tonight.
So there you have it, folks. A great way to round out season number 8 here on Thursday Night Tailgate. As we always say, sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
All right, let's get into tonight's edition of Bob's Take. And, Bob, I want to start by getting your thoughts on the Antonio Brown I'm Sorry tour. Last week, he talked about how he owes the league an apology. He said he owes the Steelers an apology. This week, he's talked about how he didn't know how good he had it with Ben Roethlisberger. Are you buying any of this, or is this just a desperate guy who might now be realizing this could be it for him?
Well, Chris, I mean, it's sad, and it could come at it from so many different angles. It gets a little crazy. I read what he wrote to Roethlisberger this week, and we can't even make up what's happened to this guy in the last year or so. And while I'm reading all these articles, Chris, I get the feeling that, and he's been asked flat out, do you think you need some mental little interference, some help or whatever? And he kind of sidesteps the issue, Chris. And, people ask him, do you think you have CTE? Do you think there's something not right? And he kind of says, well, we all got it. No, he just brushes everything off, Chris. And no matter if he's apologizing or not, I think he's in total denial of what's going on. And meanwhile, we're reading about, assault on women and burglaries and crazy stuff on social media. And so I guess my point is, to answer your question, if he was sincere, Chris, if there's a tiny bit of sincerity, you look at all the other stuff surrounding all these apologies, and I've gotten feedback from this during the week when I post things about it, and people say the same thing. I mean, he'll be saying something different next week. So, I mean, again, if there's any sincerity at all, Chris, the people that would be in charge of giving him his next job are looking at the entire resume, and it's just horrific. I mean, got a guy on the north side of 30. Yeah, he's still got a ton of talent, probably could play for another few years, physical specimen, but are you going to take a chance with that, Chris? You can't. If you're a GM, you can't. If you have a team with good chemistry, you can't. I mean, who's going to give him a shot? Maybe an XFL team, he's not going to play there. So I don't buy it, Chris. I mean, again, if everybody starts accepting this guy, and we're a very forgiving society, but, another month from now, he'll say something or do something stupid, or that's if he's not in jail, that we'll just be shaking our head again and say, my goodness. And again, you and I are in agreement. The best thing the Steelers could have ever done. And the Steelers don't make many bad personnel moves when it comes to big players, Chris. I truly believe that with Le'Veon Bell. So again, I don't buy what he's throwing out. It's all based on what his people are telling him to do. But I think this guy needs a lot of help, and he shouldn't even be thinking about football right now.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. I mean, it's a really sad story, and we've talked about how sad it is and ridiculous it has been at times. But I'm not buying into the I'm sorry tour. I think someone is, again, pointing him in a direction saying, you better get out there and apologize, because right now it's not looking like anybody is going to pick you up. And this could be the end, and the only way you're going to get another opportunity is to start apologizing. So I think, he's following that direction. But the thing that you mentioned, and I hope it's not the case, but the CTE thing has been on the front of my mind when I've watched, how he's acted and reacted and the things that he's done and the choices that he's made. If I were anywhere, in his inner circle, I would be trying to figure that out and see what you could do to try to get him some help, because I think that's what he ultimately needs. Next, Bob, when you look at the teams around the league this year that didn't make the playoff, teams like my Steelers or the Cowboys or the Rams or the Bears, you talked an awful lot about that here a few minutes ago, about teams that had high expectations and teams that didn't make it. Who among the teams that you mentioned do you think has the best chance of making a run next season?
Well, again, based on talent, you would have to think Cleveland, they have to be, Chris, at least a 9, 7, 10, and 16. I'm going on paper, obviously, but you are changing the dynamic there with a new coach, a new defensive coordinator. I hope guys like Beckham and some of the other guys get it right now, that it's more about team, and Stefanski coming in is going to have to be that guy, Chris. So, I mean, they're so up against it right now. They have to make the play. It's on the players too. I think Beckham loses all his credibility if he just plays average next year and they don't make the playoffs. There's so much on the line for those guys with their reputations and everything. If there's a disaster in Cleveland next year, I mean, that team is just that whole franchise is gonna fall apart. So that would be one team you'd think that it could go either way, but I'm going to say they're probably a team that can get there, for sure. And then, of course, an interesting team, Chris, to me would be this Las Vegas team. They finished 7-9 last year, and you don't know if a guy like Brady would consider going there, but they're going to have some new players. There's going to be excitement there and everything. And with teams like Denver and Chargers not doing that well. Yeah, they're in the same division with Kansas City, but Las Vegas would be an interesting thing to see how they can do it. You know, they got a great tight end. They got some good players on that team, and we know about their coach. So that's a team that, you know, I might look for good things next year just because the whole rebirth there. So we'll see who's playing quarterback, but that's the whole thing. I think they're going to do pretty good. So those are the teams right away. I think, you know, the Browns and a team like the Raiders who have a lot to prove. You know, in the NFC, it's really hard, Chris. I don't know if teams like Washington and the Giants, even though with the changes they've made, I just don't see them being able to do good enough. And Minnesota, I think, is in that same kind of spot as almost Cleveland. They have to start doing something quickly because there's just too much expectations there. But I think the rest of the league is still far behind.
So that's sort of, I was going to make a comment, but I'm going to hold my comment here for a minute because it sort of dovetails into the next thing I want to get your thoughts on. And we'll talk about this with Tony here in a few minutes. But if you were putting money on it, speaking of Vegas, who's Tom Brady playing for next season? You know, like I said a minute ago, I think he might be itching to play somewhere else. And he obviously would agree to only playing for someone who is ready to win now. But if you're putting down money, is he back in New England next season? Is he playing somewhere else? And if he's playing somewhere else, where would it be?
The only thing, I've done so much thinking about this and reading about it, Chris. The only thing that makes sense to me, really makes sense to me, would be for him to stay in New England, you know, and go on a farewell tour, but he needs to get a few more weapons about. Maybe he's waiting for that. I don't know where they stand. It can't be a money thing, Chris. If they're saying that he's been offered $30 million, he doesn't need the money. The money, it doesn't. They're saying he's taking less over the. He does not need the money. I mean, if they give him $30 million, I think that might be enough for him to play. It's just a matter of, if he doesn't, then it's more than that. It might be him and a Belichick thing. I don't know. So then you look at the other possibility. The Giants were brought up this week. They're not even close to being ready to win now, even if he makes them better. And they got some good players, new coach and everything. They're not going to win next year. Dallas has been brought up, but then you bring in the whole Prescott thing. That doesn't make any sense. You know, the Chargers, now that's interesting because of his home in L.A., Chris, the fact that Phillip Rivers isn't going to be around anymore. But are they good enough to do it in 1 year or two if he has one more after that? That's a possibility. And the other team I could see might be the Raiders. And that's a team because, again, he probably would get a lot of joy of, even if they didn't win it, putting that team in a position, if a 10-11 win season, that they can jumpstart a whole new fan base there. So, but, you know, they're talking about Bob Kraft versus Mark Davis as a big thing there. So I don't know what makes sense. The Titans were brought up, but they might lose Derrick Henry, and that would be there are 500 teams, Chris. So again, if it's not Las Vegas or the Chargers, it's got to be New England. I don't know. If I had to put money, I'm thinking back to New England, but he needs to see that they've improved the team around him.
Yeah, and then I think that's spot on. Let me give you a couple of other scenarios that I threw out there. And the reason why I held my comment a moment ago is because I do think the Raiders would make a lot of sense because the NFL would want to make a splash in Las Vegas. They would, you know, draw people from California to go out to the Vegas games. It would be a big deal around the city. I think it would draw people from all over the area. So I think the league would be very happy and maybe nudging, winking to the Raiders going, you guys need to make a big offer and try to get this guy out here. I think you're right about the Chargers as well, because as we talked about throughout the season, nobody is going to LA Charger games that aren't rooting for the other team. So they need to make a big splash. You got the billions of, dollars that they've invested in that stadium out there for the Rams and the Chargers. So I think that would make a heck of a lot of sense. So I'm with you on all of those. Let me throw you a couple of curveballs here. And, Ange mentioned this, and like from Ange's, lips to God's ears. If Roethlisberger isn't healthy and can't come back, it's just not going to work. He needs more time, or it's time ultimately for him to hang up the cleats because the arm just can't recover. Tom Brady signing with the Steelers would be an ultimate way for Tom Brady to show the Patriots, hey, guess what? Guess who's coming to town? And I'm bringing the Steelers, and we're going to try to win 7. So I think that would be an ultimate way to get back at the Patriots and show them, that how much how much it was him versus Belichick. The Cowboys decide that they don't want to give Dak $30 or $40 million a year. Is that a team that's close to being able to win it all? Again, they only were 8-8, and Dak had we talked about his numbers earlier, so he had a decent season. But the defense is okay. He's got Ezekiel Elliott. They could bring back Cooper and, Witten. He's talking about going to the Giants and all of that. Maybe he decides to stay or they bring in another person at tight end. They certainly would have the weapons on offense, and they got a pretty good defense. That would intrigue me to see. And, we got to wonder if Roger Staubach would let him wear 12. If the Steelers would let him wear 12 for that matter too. But I think that those are a couple of interesting things. We talked a couple of weeks ago, the 49ers, would they want to bring him in? They certainly got the defense. He's got enough weapons on offense. They were obviously that close to winning it all. Could he go to San Francisco, and would it be a kind of a crazy thing, right? Do they trade Jimmy G back to the Patriots to make room for Tom Brady? That would be an interesting story. But the 49ers are just that close, so that would be an interesting opportunity. And let me throw one more at you. And I know Tony Collins is hanging on the line, and this will be an interesting thing, and we'll talk to him about it when we bring him on. What about the Buffalo Bills? They've got a good running back in Singletary. They would have to they need a wide receiver one and a tight end, so they would have to go out there and spend a little more money to bring in a couple of weapons around him, but they got a very good defense, and it would give Josh Allen a couple of seasons to, work behind Brady and learn and all of those sorts of things to help his development maybe, for a couple of years from now. But they're an intriguing team for me. I mean, again, they were, nipping at the Patriots' heels all season long, and that's where Drew Bledsoe went when things ended in New England. Could he follow suit with that and try to, come back and win a division in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills and see where they could go from there? So those are some other, curveball ideas for where Tom Brady could go. What do you think about any of those, Bob?
Well, I think San Francisco there, it would be the team that is most ready to win, Chris. As we said, they have some free agents, but I'm sure they make some good personnel moves there. You got to think, is Brady for a year or two better than Garoppolo for the next few or for the near future? That's a tough decision, but, we also said Garoppolo coming to New England to replace that void where he's already familiar with the system and everything. That would be very, very intriguing to me. So, there's a lot of things going on, Chris. Thing about the NFL though, it's a 365-day thing. You would hope that this guy could make up his decision pretty quick. I know it's a big decision, Chris, but these teams have to know. You know that these personnel people are working 24/7 on some of this stuff, and you got to know if your quarterback is going to be Tom Brady or not going into the season, or else your franchise just comes to a total halt right now. So, very, very interesting, and there's no timeline or it's a very bizarre situation that we're talking about a 43-year-old free agent. It's kind of a very unique thing. I've never seen anything quite like it.
All right, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Tony on the other side of this real quick station break.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari, where NFL legends live on. Back to you, boys. He's alive.
And now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tony, how are you?
Hi, Tony.
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Chris and Bob?
We're fantastic as well. So, Tony, you probably heard Bob and I, we were talking about Tom Brady and some opportunities for where Brady could go if it's not New England. So, I want to get your thoughts on the whole thing. If he doesn't end up signing back in New England, if you're laying money, where do you think he goes?
First of all, he will not go to Pittsburgh.
I'll take care of that.
I can dream, my friend. It's the off season. I can dream.
Let's get this straight right now. He won't be going to Pittsburgh. Okay, so that's totally out. The only team that I would see him maybe looking at, and you know, I don't know how true some of the stuff I've been hearing. It may be as Vegas, the Raiders. So that's one team that he may go to. But I'm going to tell you right now, Chris, Bob, I truly believe, don't have the inside scoop, but if I was a betting man, I would put a good little wager on this, that Tom Brady will be back in New England, to play another season. And the reason I say that is I kind of know Brady's spirit, and the way it kind of ended, against Tennessee is not the way he wanted to end. So his last pass, the interception for a touchdown, and just his competitiveness, he's gonna come back. He needs some help, and I'm pretty sure Belichick and the organization is gonna get him some help, and that's one of the things that he really lacked last year, and it kind of showed. You know, even Edelman wasn't 100% last year, and you can see Edelman didn't play a part. You know, a couple of drop passes that, you know, Edelman usually catches. So I know a lot of teams would love to have Brady on their squad right now, but you got to understand too, Brady's gonna be 41, 42 years old, and does he still have it? I think he does, but to invest in someone when you got these young quarterbacks, and these young quarterbacks are pretty good, man. They just need a little experience to play a little bit. I really think Jimmy G is going to be a great quarterback in the future. He just didn't have it this year. He met up against Mahomes, which I think Mahomes is going to be a Hall of Famer if everything keeps going the way it's going for him. But I just believe that Tom Brady will be back in New England just to prove that he can do it again.
And Tony, to your point, and Bob mentioned this as well about, you know, Brady needs some help. They've got to go out and they've got to bring in some help. This is a team that lost 4 of their last 6 games, including the playoff loss to the Titans. And they're a team that many times that we've talked about them and doing the prognostication and whatnot, we thought they could crawl out of bed and score 30 points. But they only did that once in their last 10 games, and that was against the Bengals, which doesn't count. So what do you think? What do you think they need to bring in if Brady is back in the fold? Where do they need the additional help to get back into Super Bowl contention?
And even before I answer that, just think about how great the defense was last year for New England. I mean, they had a stellar defense, and if they could have put up just a few points, man, I think we would have been in the Super Bowl again. But again, the weapons, we got to have the weapons. I mean, you know, you always say one man can't run an offense. You got to have it a team sport. But I'm going to tell you, man, losing Gronk crushed us last year because we didn't have that go-to guy. We need a go-to guy, and we need a go-to guy at tight end. I think one of the things that really helped Brady a lot was Gronk. I'm not saying we can't get another Gronk, but we need a tight end, and we need a receiver that can get downfield and can catch the ball. I mean, there are some great receivers in the league. I was really disappointed when New England had a first round pick, and they took the kid from Arizona State, and there's this great kid, I think his name is Metcalf, that just had an awesome season with Seattle. And I mean, he killed the combine. I mean, I think he ran like a 4.3. The kid's like 6'4", 230 or something like that. He's just a beast. And we overlooked him. We didn't get him, and that's something that you just can't do right now when you got Brady, you know, going. And I'm going to say this is his last leg. I mean, you know, he needs those receivers around. You know, Brady 10 years ago probably would have made the playoffs. Well, probably would have made the Super Bowl 10 years ago, but it's not 10 years ago. 41, 42 years old, and he's got to get a receiver that can get downfield. And I truly believe he needs to have at least 3 weapons that he can go to in order for them to be successful. You know, the defense is great, and I think that a lot of the defensive players are coming back, but we need offensive game, and our offensive line has got to be healthy. Dante Scarnecchia, who actually coached me when I was at New England. He was a special teams coach when I was there. Just a great guy and a great offensive lineman coach. He's gone. So we're going to have someone come in to fill that spot because, you got to protect Brady. Can't scramble. He's not going to be able to get moved like he used to move. So we got to get one of the most important things I also think is our offensive line. We got to have somebody to protect Brady as well. But he needs those receivers, those dependable receivers. And who they are, I don't know. I don't know who it could be. I'll tell you, I would like to have Antonio Brown.
No, you would not.
Regardless of how crazy he is, Antonio Brown is a player, man. Antonio Brown can flat out get it. I don't care what anybody says. This kid, he can play. He might not be all tight upstairs with some of the decisions that he's been making lately, but he's a baller. Without a doubt, I would love if they can work that out. But who knows what that
really?
Yeah, really, Antonio Brown.
Wow, You don't want. You got Crazy knocking at the door. You don't let Crazy back in the door.
Hey, man. Hey, I'm gonna tell you something. I think he's come to his senses. He's apologized.
Oh.
You know how crazy and stupid he was. But, I'm going to tell you, Antonio Brown is a guy that we can definitely use. But, will that happen? Probably not because of how the New England way is. And so it probably won't happen. But I would love to have Antonio Brown on our team. But we just got to get those
goodness. Did Angelo hit you over the head with a club when you guys were playing golf? Did something? Did they fall out of the cart? What happened? Something happened.
Okay, let me ask you this: when Antonio Brown was playing for the Steelers and he was doing all those great stuff, what did you think about it?
Well, so a couple of things, right? So my Steeler buddies will tell you that probably as early as 3 years ago, I was advocating for the trade because in my mind, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell are me guys. All they care about is me, my numbers, all that sort of stuff. They don't care about if the team won, it was sort of a bonus, but it wasn't they didn't have to have the win. They had to have the numbers, and they're about me. And you can't win with me guys. You just can't. Mike Singletary and his favorite thing about, when Vernon Davis can't win with them. And I agree. So I was all about wanting to trade Antonio Brown to Seattle for one of the defensive backs.
But you got to understand too, Chris. Now this is the thing about the New England Patriots organization and their way. I truly believe if Antonio Brown could stay there at New England for a year, he would learn the way and he would understand how important it is as a team player. Because that's what New England does. I mean, okay, take a look at Randy Moss. And when I thought Randy Moss came to New England, I was like, oh man, Randy Moss, man, he's a great player, but man, can he handle the New England Patriot way? And you see what Randy Moss did, man. We should have went undefeated that year, but we didn't. But I truly believe because of the way New England does things, if Antonio Brown would come, he would understand. Now, that's the only organization I would say how we do it. Again, like you said, Antonio Brown is a me guy, and Le'Veon Bell is a me guy. But, at the same time, they're still great players, man. They just got to, start thinking the right way, you know what I mean? So I think if Antonio Brown would have came to New England, he would understand the Patriot way. And once you understand the Patriot way, man, it's all win for everybody, man.
So let me give you another maybe half step below that in the me / crazy guy that maybe the Patriots could go out and actually work a deal for. And Bob, I want your input on this too. what do you think about the Patriots making a draft day deal to get Odell Beckham Jr.?
I mean, that would be fantastic too. I think that would be a smart thing. They're going to have to do something. And see, here's where everything is kind of crazy, because in March, I think they need to know what Brady's going to do. I think next month, and the draft is not until April, so they're going to have to come to a decision in March, even before the draft. What Tom Brady's going to do? Are you staying or are you leaving? So they can know what they're going to do, because when you lose Brady, who's the backup quarterback to Brady? What's this guy? I don't know the guy's name, Stinson or something like that. I mean, come on. Brady has the Patriots, I think, in a headlock right now, because they're waiting on him to make this decision. And of course, it's a big decision. But I look at Tom Brady, and I just think, what a big mark to his legend for him not to finish out with New England. I just can't see him in another uniform for some reason. I just don't think he would do that because of what he's done with New England. A lot of people say, well, Brady wants to prove that he can do it without Belichick. I don't think so. I think Brady understands how important Belichick is to him, and Belichick understands how important Brady is to him. So it's a situation with Brady right now where he's going to have to make a decision in a month, and I just really as a player wouldn't understand why he would try to go to another team. I just can't see that right now. Like I said, if I was betting man and had some money to put on that, I would put a pretty amount of pity that he's going to be back in the England next year. I just can't see him with another uniform. And I could be wrong, but I think we're going to have Brady back again, and we're going to go to the Super Bowl again. We're going to win it again, and then Brady's going to retire.
So, Bob, what do you think about the idea of the Patriots making a deal, whether it's for Odell Beckham Jr. or someone of that ilk, to bring, Brady comes back, they make a big deal to bring in a big number, because I don't know that you're going to be able to go draft a wide receiver one or a big tight end that he's going to need in order to get back to where they want to go. I would think that they would be out there looking for a deal. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think Tony was right on when he's talking about they need that guy to go along with Edelman. I mean, Beckham is very interesting because it seems like Beckham, for the knucklehead things he's done, I think Beckham can't deal with playing with losing teams. So if he would come to New England with this crew and Brady coming back, it would be a whole different type of thing. And we know he probably knows the way they operate up here. It's a lot different than anywhere else. You either do what you're told, or you fit in, or you're gone. So that would be very interesting. That would take care of one of the things. And of course, like Tony said, the tight end, let's put it this way, Gronk was such a fixture there for a long time. Brady's offense revolved around him for such a long time. And to me, that's the whole gist of why they did not win a playoff game last year. It's a whole different team without a superstar tight end there. Now they got to get somebody very good in there. I mean, look at what they got from the tight end last year, guys. Watson and Lacoste. Watson is almost as old as Brady. That's insane. I think the two of them combined for 30 catches. That just can't happen. That offense is revolved around the tight end forever. So that was their problem in a whole nutshell. We can talk about everything else. Look, Michelle, White, and Burkhead, they rushed for 1,500 yards. That was not the problem. It's about Brady getting those two weapons. Now, if they can fill those, or they promise Brady, look, we sign you for $30 million, whatever you want, $30 million, we're going to get a good tight end here and a shutdown receiver. He has to come back. Like Tony said, it makes no sense for him to go anywhere else. He's going to be 43, Tony, when he starts playing for anyone else. That would be insane for him to go anywhere. So improve what you have here. Make your mark. One more in New England. If you can't get there, they're still going to be very good.
Tony, one more before we let you go. And the XFL has kicked off its season. any interest? Are you going to watch the games? Are you going to try to check it out? Are you intrigued at all to see what they've got going on?
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I just wish the XFL could kind of understand how important they are to the NFL. And I say this because there are guys who get caught in the numbers game, and they're good football players, and they get cut from an NFL team, and now they don't have anywhere to go. And now the XFL is here. One of the things I watched the game, and I watched the kid from Ohio State play the DC team. The kid is big. He can throw the ball. If he gets an opportunity, he can be an NFL quarterback. I can't remember what his name is. Played at Ohio State. Yeah, that's it. But I think it's so important. You know how Major League Baseball they have the minor leagues, and they have they can bring up players from the minor leagues, and they can send down players to the minor leagues. This is something where the XFL and a lot of the things that I watched the game. One of the things I really loved was the kickoff. I mean, I think the kickoff is fantastic. It eliminates people, running down and, getting crashed and getting hurt. At the same time, it understands where, those guys have an opportunity to run this thing back for a touchdown. It makes it a lot exciting. But I think if the XFL and NFL will come together, man, I think it would be just, fantastic for those guys who missed the cut. And there's a lot of great football players, man, that you guys have never heard of, where they get caught in the numbers game, or they're not in the right place at the right time. And now they're cut the last cut of the season. There's a lot of guys out there, and I think the XFL is a great place where you can, get your stuff together, get some film and, understand how tough it is to get to the NFL and play good. I hope it lasts. McMahon has a lot of money and he's doing a lot of great things, and I think the NFL can learn some things from the XFL, especially the kickoff return. That to me was pretty exciting, and it eliminates people getting hurt running down full speed. So that's one of the things that I like about it. Hopefully it'll last. I don't want them to get in a competing war with the NFL. I would love to see them work together. Be like the minor league for the NFL.
Couldn't agree more with that. Tony, one last time this season, let our listeners know how they can stay up to date with the great things you're doing and help kids go to college. TonyCollinsFoundation.org. Go to our website right there. This year we're
trying to get probably like 6 or 7 more kids this year into a scholarship fund in upstate New York. It's something that I'm really proud of, the work that we've been doing. And so if you want to help us, go to our website and make a donation. Everything that we get, we give to these kids to go off to college.
Tony, you're the best, my friend. We can't thank you enough for another great season and spending time with us. You're fantastic and one of our all-time favorites, my friend, and a good friend. And we appreciate you very, very much.
Thank you, guys. Hey, Bob, I'm coming for you, man. Next year, that trophy's gonna be mine, man. So I'm just.
I can feel the heat already, man. I'm feeling it. Look forward to it, Tony.
See you, Tony. All the best to you and your family, my friend. See ya. That's a great Tony Collins. We've got our next guest, Lynn Cain, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Lynn on the other side of this real quick station break.
Hear NFL legends, players, coaches, and media members from around the country sharing their insights and stories with us year-round. Here on Thursday night, Tailgate.
And now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former running back Lynn Cain. Let me remind you about Lynn's background. He's from Los Angeles, California, played his college ball at USC, where he helped the Trojans to 3 bowl victories, including the 1979 Rose Bowl over Michigan and the national championship that season, according to the UPI poll. He was a 4th-round draft pick, the number 100 overall selection in 1979 by the Atlanta Falcons. Played here in Atlanta from 1979 to 1984. Played his last season back home in L.A. for the Rams. Over the course of his NFL career, he rushed for just over 2,300 yards and had nearly 1,100 more receiving yards, and he scored 25 touchdowns. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution named Lynn one of the top 50 Falcons of all time. He is now the head coach at LA Southwest Junior College, and we're very excited to have him back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Lynn, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back, Lynn.
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate you inviting me back. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great.
So,
yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Lynn, I want to get your thoughts before we get into some of the stuff about your background and your time here in Atlanta and what you're doing now. But wanted to get your thoughts on the Super Bowl. What'd you think of the game?
You know, I was excited about the game. You know, I was looking for, you know, playing in the NFL, that league with the San Francisco on that side. There was a part of me that was like, you know, since I played with the Falcons, we kind of lean towards that the NFC conference. But I love what they're doing at Kansas City. You know, Reed played at and also coached over at Glendale Community College, a college that we played against the last game of the season. So that was great to see him and his coaching style. I really enjoy the way he plays his quarterback, and I love the way the kid plays and the way he throws the ball and his ideas and thoughts that he's able to generate. So it was a lot of fun, and what I thought was going to happen turned out that way. I felt like Kansas City would play in the last two quarters, that they would play some good football, and sure enough, Mahomes did a great job of taking control of the game in the third and fourth quarter, especially in that fourth quarter. And it's like, I looked at it, he willed himself to win, to that victory. You know, it's something that he just dug down deep down inside of him and said, we're going to win this thing. And sure enough, they did. So I was happy to see a good game. I felt for the San Francisco. They played such a hard fought game the first half. But then the second half, they just didn't show up when they needed to make big plays. And so it was a lot of fun watching the game. So.
And Lynn, anytime folks around here in Atlanta know you're going to be coming on the show, and it's, you know, this time of year, whether it's, you know, in the postseason or around the Super Bowl, everybody immediately starts to talk about that 1980 team. And we've talked about it on the show here several times with you and with Steve Barkowski. But everyone remembers that 80 season and how really close you guys came, and what it would have been like, because they feel pretty confident that you guys would have beaten the Eagles that year and gone on to the Super Bowl and probably would have won it. When you think back on it, is that the one that got away?
Yeah, you know, there's not a day that doesn't go by that when we get close and I start hearing them advertising Super Bowl, there's not a moment that my heart doesn't say, oh man, we're 2 games away from going to the Super Bowl. You know, it was a great run, and, you know, to be up, beating Dallas by 5 minutes left in the game, and we were still up and winning, and to let that thing get away. We just, we didn't have the right focus and, concentration on to finish it. So yeah, it still haunts me. It still, creeps up and says, you know, you almost had it.
So, you mentioned focus. Did you think, did the players lose focus? Did the coaching staff lose focus? You know, some of the controversy around town with, you know, with Lehman Bennett and all that, it was, you know, the concern that it was that the team got too conservative. The offense got too conservative because of the play calls. And if you just would have, you know, kept the foot on the pedal for a little bit longer, probably would have gone your way.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of speculation. You know, a lot of when you look back at the game, there was quite a few things that happened during the game. You know, we went into a zone coverage, and boy, Randy, the quarterback White just started picking us apart. And from that standpoint, we had these linebackers, Joel Williams and Al Richardson. They were buzzing, and especially Joel. You know, he made a tremendous play, rushed the quarterback. The ball's thrown, it's the reception. The receiver's running with the ball downfield. Joel turns around and chases the guy down, causes a fumble, and I think he picks up the ball. Just that kind of effort was that we had going for us in that first half. And And the game did slow down. There's things that we chose to do. I think run the ball. But, Chris and Bob, it's your determination. It's what you plan during the beginning of the year, if you're on focus. And I don't think we had, the plan to go to the Super Bowl that year. I know that Coach had, said that it wasn't our turn. And it just wasn't our turn. And I don't know if that played a part in the preparation of us playing against Dallas, but it just seemed that we didn't have an answer for those moments in time. And winning a championship, I've been in a championship all the way through my life. Was able to win championships. In junior college, we won a state championship. USC, we won bowl games, but we also won the national championship. So I know what it's like to be in that preparation part when there's 6 P's. They used to say prior planning prevents a pitiful poor performance. And so in conclusion, there was always a way that we were going to play the game and it was going to play out. I think that was, and I go back to this Super Bowl game when I think of Kansas City. Kansas City had a plan. That shift move that they made that goes back to the whole days, that was a tremendous play. I loved it. It's like when they shifted, I thought, what are they doing? But, it turned out to be a winning moment. At some point they got on the board. And you got to have that kind of planning, and we did things, we made mistakes at the end of the game that cost us, from even getting a first down. We get a first down, the game's over, and we go to the next game, which is playing Philadelphia in Atlanta, who we had beat, like you said, we beat at the beginning, but we let it get away. And I don't know, John Robinson wouldn't have let that thing get away like that. John McKay wouldn't have let that thing get away like that. You just don't, when you got that moment, that kind of, backing and the people that were supporting us, and it was a roll. We were on a roll, and we let it get away. And so I know that these things played a part in the minds of the players, and I think it defeated us right down to the point where the game was over. I'll end on this point right here, is that this comment, we had a game we played here. This is what I was taught, fellas. I was taught this. I'm a head coach. I'm standing on the sideline, the last game of the season. A team, Glendale drives the ball down and they score. They tie the game up with a 2-pointer. They score and our team comes to the sideline. First thing I did was I turned around and I looked on the sideline to see if we had a letdown. And I saw the energy was still up. Well, I didn't know that there was going to be, we got the kickoff now, but our best return guy asked the coach, what does this mean? And they said, well, it's going to go into overtime. And if they get the ball, they score, they win the game. He says, I'm going to take this thing all the way back. I don't know why Glendale kicked off to my best return guy. They did. He got the ball, and fellas, he went 70 yards for a touchdown. The game's over. We win. That's the attitude. When we broke that huddle and had a chance to make a first down, Too Tall jumped offside, that never should have happened. It never should have happened. But it did. And I just felt like if we had planned better at that moment right there, we would have walked away, and the champagne that was on ice in the locker room at the time when we entered the locker room, we'd have been drinking it instead of packing it.
Wow. Bob, question for Lynn?
Yeah, Lynn, it's always great to have you back on the show. And I was watching a little of the XFL this past weekend, Lynn, and I said, I got to ask Lynn about these guys because I saw June Jones and Jerry Glanville coaching in the league. And I said, Lynn came into the league with these guys, one as a teammate, another as a coach. And here they are 40 years later, still affiliated with football. What are your memories of those two guys, Lynn, and did you think that these guys could be around this long?
You know, what I remember, I definitely remember Jerry Glanville, boy. He was running around and coaching that defense, and the blitz. You guys remember that? He was about blitzing, boy. It was all out. Pin your ears back and let's go. And so Jerry would run around, and then he was, you know, dressed in black for Elvis Presley. So he was preparing for that moment in time. Wasn't he in a movie? He was in a movie with Burt Reynolds, right? Yeah, Jerry.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah, he was something. And then June Jones, I give June a lot of credit for, I was talking to Bart, called him up, and, I'm a head coach, but I also want to coordinate. So I was I want to learn the balance of the two. And I was asking Bart about some questions about June and the offense we were running. And June had a lot to do with running, changing that offense with us. And they were flooding zones and areas and running people. And then they created an offense where it was not the traditional just running a route from a route tree, 9 route, 8 route, 6 route, 1 route, a hitch or whatever. But they got into, they might call a play, trip drive with 909, Wally get open, and they gave him freedom to run a route that whatever he saw the opening. And if it was a man coverage or zone, he knew where to sit it and zone or run a route in man coverage. And so June had a lot to do with it. So I'm not surprised that June is still in coaching. Matter of fact, he's the one who told me, Lynn, I know that the players I'm going to go and recruit. I already know who I'm going to go draft. All those players, he was already planning to coach. And I'm not surprised that they have lasted this long, fellas.
And Lynn, we're 2 weeks off the Super Bowl here, and I always like to ask former players, especially guys that were in the league for a while like yourself, how they spent their off seasons. What was your normal routine, Lynn, as far as how long would you give your body a rest when the season ended before you started workouts again? And what other things did you do in the off season while you were still playing?
You know, I was one of the few players that worked out in the off season, when it came to, from the, most of those guys were used to coming in and getting in shape. But I learned, through all of the tradition, from SC to East LA Community College to Roosevelt High School. Roosevelt, Mike Garrett went through there. So there was tradition that I was following from Mike Garrett. Then you had the Hudson brothers. One of the Hudson brothers went to USC as a defensive back, and so the tradition was set and working out. And so I was one of the guys that would work out. And I'd take a week or two off, maybe 3 weeks, and travel. I'd go back, fly home, and spend time with family. But I would gradually start getting back into working out. And George Dosso, the late George Dosso, when he came to the Falcons with Dan Henney, he really helped me tremendously, fellas, in my off-season workout plan. And so I worked out. I was Jeff Van Note said it. He said, Lenny, you're a dying breed. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm a dying breed. He said, yeah, you love the game. You play for the love of the game. But most of these guys are playing for the money. And, fellas, that's how I worked out during the off-season. I love what I did. I was thankful that I was able to play in a league that I watched on TV and watched all the Rams and watched the great players, Roman Gabriel and Bass and all those great players play, and then to get a chance to put that blue uniform on and go. And, it was a tremendous thing. But I was always in shape. I was coming in shape. I heard someone say you were in the top 3 players in the history of the Falcons when it came to conditioning. And I did. I got myself in shape. I had to. I was 6'1", 205 pounds, blocking Lawrence Taylor, 6'5", 250 pounds, and he's running a 4.5. And I'm running a 4.6 downhill.
Yeah.
Hey, it was a lot of fun, but I was always in shape. Played racquetball. Hey, and the year that I was sitting on the bench. They had me at insurance, and they told me you're going to be insurance in case William gets hurt and Gerald gets hurt. You're going to play. Well, that happened when we flew out in 1984. We flew out to Los Angeles, and I'm warming up, and I'm not warming up to play. I'm warming up, just hey, Gerald's in. Gerald comes over and says, Lynn, I can't play. I'm like, what? Yeah, I can't play. So you're starting. Oh, it was 90 degrees out there. I hadn't played a lick, but the good thing is I was a practice player, man. SC taught us how to practice. Matter of fact, Mike Garrett at Roosevelt, they taught us how to practice and practice hard. So I went out there, and who would think on that day I had 140 yards, 3 touchdowns, and we won the game. We beat LA in Los Angeles for the first time in the history of the Falcon organization. Man, that felt
wow.
Good. But I tell you what,
Great.
I was packed in ice on the airplane going home.
Great. Lynn, you mentioned SC. Want to get your thoughts on your alma mater. They did pretty well last season, particularly in the conference, going 7-2, 8-5 overall. Being out there in LA yourself now, how you feeling about what you're seeing from SC?
We had a reunion, and let me start off this first. One year, this was back in 87, and it had to be back when Smith was the head coach. I went to the game, and I was standing out there on the field. I had a sideline pass, so I'm standing out there with warm-up going on, and an alumni walks up to me, and he says, Lynn Cain, how you doing, Lynn? Good to see you. Glad you're back here and watching football. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about the word mediocrity? Oh, I was like, uh-oh. He hit me with mediocrity. I said, well, according to the head coaches that I played for, that's non-existent. It's not about mediocrity. It's about you being your best. Boy, man, I tell you, it was a sad note. And the head coach at the time, they lost to Notre Dame, and they let him go. So the second story is we had a reunion, 1978, that championship team. We got together and had a reunion. They invited us to the Salute to Troy, which happens every summer. And John Robinson stood up, and he said that, I think it was Pete Carroll got the job. He said, Pete, congratulations. Glad to see that you got the job. I just got one message for you. Win, win, win. and that's the way it is, fellas. SC's about maximizing the potential of the players and winning. It's not just 8-3, making it to a bowl game. It's about somewhere in there, they want to be in the race for the national championship. And that's the way, that's what was drilled in me through those coaches. And that's the way it is at the school.
And Lynn, we've talked about the Falcons a little bit about your time there. When we look at where the Falcons are at now, talk about mediocrity, 7-9, a team that, a few years ago should have won a Super Bowl. You talk about when you were there, should have won a Super Bowl. They should have won the Super Bowl a few years ago. And ever since they lost that big lead in the Super Bowl, it feels like the team has gotten a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse. How do you feel about what you're seeing from the Falcons, and what do you think they need to do to get this thing turned around?
That's a great question, man. It really is. And now that I'm in a head coaching position, and I look at what is it that leadership has to do, and I've seen some great coaches in my life, and been able to play for some great coaches, and having a coach that can even that leadership and general managers, you gotta have that support. one of the things that my brother, I have brothers that were great athletes and they were really great, did some great things for me. I had a brother who high jumped over 7 feet, played baseball, basketball, football, ran track. He did all that, but he didn't play basketball because he couldn't play back-to-back sports. But he made it to the Oakland A's and played there. And then I had another brother who took me around and played basketball and taught me some things. And these guys really taught me leadership, that how to lead, and you lead by example. That's what I began seeing is leadership. You know, you need to have the right leadership that's going to lead you. So my brother one day was talking to me and he says, man, I can't believe they let Jerry West go. And I was like, oh, Jerry West. He said, yeah, Jerry West is the reason why the Lakers were very successful back in those years. And I was like, okay, why is that? He said, he's the one that went and got Kobe Bryant. Ooh. He brought in Kobe. Not only did he bring in Kobe, he brought in all those other players that helped him, Shaq and all of them, to go to the championship. He says, Jerry leaves there and goes to Memphis, and guess what happens there? They win there. Jerry leaves there and goes to Golden State, and guess what? They start winning over there. Now Jerry's with the LA Clippers, and guess what, fellas? It doesn't take a rocket science to figure this out. They're winning over there. Jerry knows talent. When you find someone who understands the nature of talent, the talent that you can assess, then you know how to put together a coaching staff that's going to win. Fellas, all I can say is get on the bus and enjoy the ride.
So, Lynn, you've talked about how you're, you're head coach now at LA Southwest, and you're taking over a program that was pretty much in complete disarray, and you're kind of piecing that thing back together. Talk about the school and your program. Yeah,
fellas, this school has there was a coach here, Henry Washington. He was the head coach for years and loved the program. He was in the program, I want to say almost 30 years. And he grew up in this area. He grew up going to school in this area and then became the head coach here at LA Southwest. The good thing about it is he hired a coach who was my coach in high school, Ray McClain, the late Ray McClain. And when I came back to LA, I was looking to get into coaching. I called Ray McClain and said, Coach, I want to get together with you. And so we did. We met. He gave me advice. He said, go meet this Coach Washington. So years ago, my wife and I came back 2002. So years ago, I came over here and met with him. And who would think that it would come full circle where I would get hired over here? The team was in a disarray. They're on probation. And they asked me to come in. They knew my background of coaching. They said, come in and we want you to run the program. What would be your plan? And so I laid a plan out there that I would come in. I wouldn't adjust the coaching staff, fire them, and then bring in my guy. But I would go in and adjust to the coaches that are in place. I know football from the offense, defense, special teams. I'll learn the terminology that they already have in place. We won't disrupt the student athlete. I will make sure that we secure the student athlete. That was the key, fellas, is they hired me on the spot. They said, okay, you're hired. Come in and stabilize the program. So that's what I did. I came in and worked very hard, made sure that I worked the coaching staff, securing them. And once I can secure the coaching staff, then I can secure the players. Unfortunately, 5 coaches had to go. But I brought in some guys and we secured the program. And I tell you what, that last game, we got some tremendous talent on our team. That last game, we finally played a full game of football and we wound up winning the game off of that, return man. This kid can flat out fly, fellas. This kid, when you think he's at 5th year, he'll surprise you and show you a 6th year. It's like, wow. Did that just happen? Wow. And so it's been fun. It's been fun coming in, and I have experience of working with programs that have gone and had problems, financial problems, and et cetera. When I was at East LA College, I had a program call me and say, "Hey, can you come in and help us? Our coaches are fighting one another, and they're disarrayed, and the coaches are kicking the head coach out, and the parents they're having." So I came in, went over there. They were $15,000 in debt. And so I went there, helped them choose their coaches, the head coach, and then their assistant coaches, consulted them throughout the years over there. And that gave me the foundation, the experience to come over here to LA West. And so guy called me 4 years later. This guy called me and he's crying. He's like, "Hey, Coach K, we won a championship. We're $15,000 in the black. I think is in the black where you're making money." And so now they go from the red to the black, and they're so happy. Well, fellas, I come here to LA Southwest, and they're telling me the same thing. I had the experience that I can come here and stabilize their program. Now we're on the verge of bringing in a new staff, and then securing the players. It's been a lot of fun. I have had a blast, a lot of stress. My wife told me one day, two things she told me. When I was going for the job, she said, "Now, you know we don't need this. You don't need to take this job." And I'm like, "Okay, honey, I understand." So that was on the way out. But it turned out to be a great experience. And then she came back and she says, "Honey, I'm glad you took the job because it really helped you." And she says, "I see changes in you, your leadership skills. This has helped me to stabilize being a leader in that leadership position of coaching and managing people and managing the program. And fellas, I'm having a blast over here. It's a lot of fun."
Good for you, Lynn. That's awesome. So for our listeners, Lynn, that want to stay up to date with the great things that you're going to be doing there and keep track whether it's somewhere online or it's on social media, how can our listeners stay up to date with you?
You know, we're going to be putting up a website with me being the head coach. And then the other thing, we're going to be in the future, you can go to LA Southwest, how does it go? LA South Seed. That's what it is. LASouthSeed.edu. And then it'll come up, our school come up, and then you'll be able to see, where I'm at. And then the other thing, they want to put me out there on social media. I'm not out there. My wife keeps talking about that. "Honey, you need to get out there." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I like the traditional way of facing somebody and talking to them." She's like, "No, you need to get out there." So that's going to be a way of us getting out there. There'll be a way that we can get out there on social media and they'll be able to see that. Okay.
Well, Lynn, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your now very busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show and share more of your stories and insights with us. We always enjoy getting to have you as part of the segment. Thanks for being here tonight.
Fellas, I want to thank you for blessing my life. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy this. You guys are keeping my radio skills sharpened, okay? I enjoy that.
You're doing the same to us, Lynn.
Yeah, that's probably true. Lynn, take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Chris, Bob, Happy New Year, Brett.
Take care, guys.
Same to you. Take care, Lynn.
Bye. All right, thank you.
That's the great Lynn Cain. Bob, guy had a tremendous run here with the Falcons and then, doing some good things in the coaching world. And again, like I say, taking that LA Southwest program from complete disarray and kind of organizing it and getting it back going, with how positive and how good Lynn is. I got a feeling those kids are going to be very lucky to have a coach like him.
Really, Chris, well said. He's such a very, very eloquent and such a pleasant man. And like some of our other college coaches on here, he sees what the development of the entire student athlete. And but what a pleasant man. And He's has some great stories and always loves to come on the show, Chris. And he's the one that keeps us sharp, and we'll keep having him on, right?
That's all right. We've got our next guest, Zig Fracassi, hanging on the line. Going to get to Zig on the other side of this real quick station break.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
Now back and making his 11th appearance with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is not only one of our favorite guests, but also one of our favorite people on the planet, and that's Sirius XM radio host Zig Fracassi. When you check out Zig's profile on Twitter, what you're going to see is host/anchor for Sirius XM NFL and Sirius XM Sports, contributor to Sirius XM NHL, college hockey enthusiast, underrated brilliance, which we couldn't agree with more, and NCHS Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame. What you won't see is that he's also a Thursday Night Tailgate guest Hall of Famer. Zig is one of the great interviewers that you're going to hear anywhere, and just one of the great people you get to meet in this life. And we're very excited to have him back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Zig, Chris, and Bob, how are you, my friend?
Hey, guys, how are you? Always good to be with you.
Doing great.
So, Zig, we know what a great hockey fan you are, and I want to get your perspective because earlier this week, Bob and I had the opportunity to sit down and spend some time with Jim Craig. Yesterday being the 40th anniversary of the first game that they played in those Winter Olympics, the game against Sweden that they tied. But wanted to get your memories of those games and that USA team.
You know what, Chris? I mean, gosh, going back to 1980, I mean, there was so much, going on with, the United States and the situation there in Iran, and it seemed as though, the whole country was kind of in the dumps a little bit because, after the President Carter, and then they're making the change ultimately to Ronald Reagan. It was just a pall, if you will. But I remember being in high school. It was my freshman year. NCHS, by the way, is Niagara Catholic High School, and where I went to school. And, of course, they awarded me the Distinguished Alumni, and then they closed the school the week before I'm to receive the award. But that's another story for an... Let me digress just a second there. Yeah, I was supposed to receive the award last year, and I can't kid you guys. Getting ready to go to the ceremony because I live in Jersey now, working for Sirius XM, and then going back towards the Niagara Falls area, I get a notification that they closed my high school, unfortunately, and the rising cost, and unfortunately also the issue going on with needing money, let's just say, to pay off these lawsuits and everything. So I kid about it, but I really feel bad because those young people are missing out on a great education. So but back to that time, I was a freshman at Niagara Catholic, and I remember going to one of our school's hockey games after school that day, and then I had remembered that they were playing the Russians, and I remembered a few weeks earlier the Soviets just waylaid this team at Madison Square Garden. I think it was like 10-2, 10-3, the final score. So, I'm like, what chance do they have against them? And, then all of a sudden they're keeping the game close, and Jim Craig's making these otherworldly saves, and, Mark Johnson's playing out of his mind, and Eruzione with the big goal, and Harrington and Mike Ramsey on the blue line, O'Callahan, and I'm thinking, wow, this could be an upset of epic proportions. And then, they took Tretiak out, and that really kind of opened the door for things. And, I got to say, guys, 40 years later, that still might be the biggest upset, I think, in sports that I have ever seen. And simply because you're talking about, these hardened, men of the Russian Red Army, for goodness sake. We're talking about grown men and professionals, and some of them of iconic status. The coach, Tretiak in goal, and the legendary players that they had there, Mikhailov and Valery Kharlamov, and a lot of these guys. Just to see that was just absolutely astounding, and I think it, really kind of became something that the country rallied around. And I think, it was one of those things that they showed it in prime time, though a lot of people, Chris and Bob, actually knew the score ahead of time, so you almost had to feign surprise. But still, 40 years to the day, it's still maybe the landmark seminal event, at least in my sports viewing lifetime.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you for, because that's exactly how I feel about it, Zig. That win over the Soviet Union might be the single greatest sporting event of my lifetime. And, I'm a Steelers fan in the 6 Super Bowls, and, the Red Sox with their World Series championships, and the Penguins with their 5 Stanley Cups, and all of those things completely thrilling. Jack Nicklaus winning the 86 Masters, another one. But I think that game against the Soviet Union is the greatest thing I've ever seen in sport. Where does it rank for you?
Chris, and, I've seen, my teams win, championships in my lifetime. That's always, a thrill. The Bruins ending a 39-year Stanley Cup drought in 2011, beating Vancouver. That's going to rate right up there with me, because then I actually saw Boston win a championship in my lifetime. We've seen it all. I think we've actually seen now recently a 16 defeat a 1 in the NCAA tournament. NC State over Houston in '83. That was absolutely big. There's been a lot. I think Stanford a few years ago, they were about a 5-touchdown underdog. They beat USC straight up. I know you had the great Lynn Cain on. That's what kind of made me think of that for a little bit. But if that's not one, it's definitely like 1A. Or, like the great Bum Phillips used to say, roll call, it don't take long. So it doesn't take long for the roll call to where that impacts, in terms of the, at least in my, 40, 45 years of coherent sports viewing, because, being 54 years old like I am, started to remember things when I was like about 8 or 9 years old. So that would be 1 or 1A, definitely.
How about that? We're the exact same age. Zig, you mentioned your Bruins. You look at where they're at right now. The number 1 team in all of hockey, only lost 2 games so far this season at home. You got the Tampa Bay Lightning. They won 8 in a row. St. Louis making a bid to go back-to-back with their great season that they're having. My Penguins bring in Jason Zucker from the Wild, and a trade this week that I think is going to bolster them. What are you expecting from the rest of this NHL season?
Wow, yeah, and I'll commend you. I thought that was one of those, win-win deals, I think, for both teams, because Pittsburgh's obviously getting a proven commodity, and you're getting a guy on term, meaning that he's under contract, so he's locked in for the next couple of years. Whereas Minnesota, Galchenyuk was a top, not lottery pick, but top 10 pick, who's kind of bounced around the league, and you wonder why that is. Maybe now he finds a home in Minnesota. The kid, I think his last name's Addison, is a highly thought of prospect, and I think Minnesota needs to get younger. And anytime you get a first-round pick, whether it's, even, high teens, low 20s, where the Penguins would project in the standings, that's still a good move. And, Billy Guerin, obviously familiar with the Pittsburgh organization, so he found a familiar trade partner there. I think Boston will make a move before the deadline. I still think they need a top 6 scoring winger, maybe a little depth on the defense. St. Louis, let's keep Jay Bouwmeester in our prayers. Apparently doing very well now, thankfully, but he's still in the hospital there in Anaheim, and they still haven't determined what caused him to black out the other night. Really a horrific-looking incident. Reminded me a few years ago of the Rich Peverly blackout when he was with the Dallas Stars. And then a little more recently, Yuri Fisher, very young defenseman with the Detroit Red Wings. He had an episode. He hasn't been able to play again. So keeping Jay Bouwmeester in our thoughts and prayers. I still think St. Louis will be a factor out west. Don't really know who's going to win the Pacific because there's 5 teams separated by 2 points. But I think if McDavid comes back within a couple of weeks and Edmonton can kind of stay around, I'd probably give a slight lean to them, though I think they need some scoring help themselves. But it's going to be competitive going down the last 25 games here.
Bob, questions for Zig?
Hey, Zig, it's always an honor to have you on the show, and we haven't spoken with you for a few months, and got a few NFL things to throw at you. Zig, we talked earlier in the show about the Dallas situation and what might become of the quarterback thing with Prescott and the money he's looking for, Zig, and whether or not this is going to work for them financially, and with the egos down there and everything. Give us your insight into where the Dallas Cowboys stand as a franchise now. Going to have a new head coach. Looks like a lot of things are happening, but it looks like Prescott wants to break the bank and win at the same time. Tell us all about what you know about Dallas these days.
Well, Bob, they're definitely in a bit of a transition, and obviously, Jason Garrett's a good man, high character individual, and he was a good coach. I mean, you don't get to, the playoffs like they did on multiple occasions without being, at the very least, a good coach. But I think, his inability or stubbornness to be flexible during games, Bob, I think really hurt him. That's why he's no longer the coach, and I think he's going to be a good fit for the Giants with working with Daniel Jones. Mike McCarthy obviously had the year off after being fired in Green Bay. I think he's definitely shown that he wanted to learn a few things, a lot of intense study and some breaking down players and all this kind of thing. I'm a little biased because Mike Nolan's a friend of mine. He was my co-host a few years ago on NFL Radio, and he's the new defensive coordinator, so I'm rooting big time for him. And I like what they've done with the coaching staff. You alluded to Dak Prescott, and it's one of those things where Jerry Jones even said last year, we want to get something done. But at the same time, we do have cap room, but we've got other guys that we need to, take care of. Amari Cooper. Do they bring back Byron Jones, the star corner? It's one of those things where, we want to pay you, but maybe put the ego aside just a little bit here, and we can keep these other guys and still have enough to spend for other free agents. So it's up to Dak at this point. I mean, if he thinks he's worth $40 million, I got news for you. He's not. Though he is 40-24 in his 4 seasons, 2 division titles, and I don't think it was his fault this year that they didn't get there. I think there were other factors that came into this. So I still think he's a franchise-type quarterback for them. But if they have to franchise him, Bob, maybe that's what they wind up doing, because they could still have cost certainty in that relative aspect and be able to take care of Cooper and whoever else either they want to retain from their own team, or maybe look on the outside and see who they'd like to bring in. I'll tell you, a real nice addition would be Chris Jones, but you wonder what he's going to command and if Kansas City could afford to keep his services, because he's an absolute disruptor as a defensive tackle.
And Zig, our heads are spinning here as we outlined some of the Tom Brady scenarios earlier in the show, and I think Tony Collins, Chris, and I think we're kind of in the consensus that his best scenario would probably be to stay in New England and surround himself with a couple more weapons, get back to that tight end based offense, etc., and retire as a Patriot. But what have you heard, Zig? What do you think might happen? And is there something that maybe we didn't mention yet?
Guys, I've heard, from, people that I know that are pretty reliable and familiar with Patriots, and the general belief is they don't think Tom's going to leave. But if that's such the case, and I know the league year doesn't start until March 18th, so maybe that's where a lot of these decisions need to be made. So, but you know what? I mean, we've seen this in the last couple of years, maybe a little bit of, friction here and there. Maybe things aren't so hunky-dory with Brady and Belichick after a while. I think a fair scenario or thought process is maybe Tom wants to finally cash in and get that big paycheck. And I can think of 2 places that need a headline entertainer, if you will, to open their new stadiums. The Chargers out in L.A., they're going to share that playpen with the Rams. And, oh, by the way, their skill people, I think, are as good, if not better, than New England's. So you got that factor, and plus it's closer to his California home. Or, does John Gruden want to, have him with, with Aerosmith and Shania Twain and all the headliner residents in Vegas there, and have a grand opening there for that Allegiant Stadium with the Raiders? So, and Chris, you're old enough to know too. Guys like Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana,
right,
Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, guys like of that ilk, they didn't close their careers with the teams that they were so known for. So, everybody's like, oh, Brady's got to go back. Brady's got to go back. No, he doesn't. It's free agency. He can decide to do what he wants, and his legacy's already set. But again, I think I outlined some factors there why he might leave. And, maybe Belichick realizes, I may not have much longer in terms of coaching. Maybe I start letting Josh McDaniels run things, and maybe we start looking at the quarterback we want to bring in because, Tom Brady's closer to the end than he was obviously the beginning. So I think in the final analysis, and even Tom Brady Sr. said this, guys, this won't end well with New England. I just wonder if those words are going to be prophetic in the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more, Zig. And to Bob's point, when we were talking at the top of the show, we mentioned the two teams that you first brought up, the Chargers and the Raiders. But let me throw you a couple of curveballs because one of them is your Dallas Cowboys. What do you think
I'm
about?
I'm going to steal the signs first to make sure. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to get that in. I'm banging the drum as we speak. Go ahead.
What about your Cowboys bringing him in? No worries. Absolutely. We deserve that. What do you think about the Cowboys making a run? They decide, you know what, Dak isn't worth the 30 or 40 million. We're probably a quarterback away. We've got you talk about skill positions. They've got a couple of players in the skill positions. Could that be the fast track to Dallas getting themselves a Super Bowl?
That would be an interesting marriage, wouldn't it? With Mike McCarthy and Tom Brady, of course, longtime rivals and everything. And, another guy who's not afraid to make the bold move and definitely has the wherewithal to do it would be Jerry Jones. But, I don't understand. Maybe it's just me, but I think Dak Prescott is, maybe he's not a top 3 to 5 quarterback at this level. But again, he's entering his 5th year in the league, been in the playoffs twice. I think he's got tremendous temperament and leadership abilities. And what do they think of Cooper Rush? I know he was a kid that made the team a few years ago, and they do like his size and arm strength, but, it's going to be up to McCarthy here. Does he think Cooper Rush, if your scenario, Chris, lays out, would they even trade Prescott and then try to make the move for Tom Brady? Then you better have a good backup on hand already. Now, that would be a tip, too. What if Dallas drafted a quarterback this year? Then that would really start to make you wonder what their future plans are. But I just don't see that happening. I know Michael Irvin laid out that scenario, but I'm just not seeing that one. Although in fantasy land, it could happen. Tom Brady on America's team.
Let me switch gears a little on you. What are your thoughts on the XFL? How do you feel about what you're seeing week 1 XFL, and what do you see as their future?
Chris, I got to be perfectly honest. I was on the air both days when the games were going on, so I just, if you will, batted a casual eyelash at it. So I don't want to, BS you and say, oh, I thought it was great or I thought it was terrible. But from what I've been able to gather, people I talk to, and obviously, the Twitter fantasy and all this kind of thing, the Twitter timeline, actually a lot of people liked the way the game was played. So again, it's more football than it was in its first incarnation when it was all sizzle and he hate me and all this kind of nonsense. So I think from a pure football standpoint, I've been told it's actually pretty good. And you've got some guys who've been in the NFL who are playing in this league. So that's, again, from what I've heard. I haven't watched a full game, and I don't know if I'm quite conditioned yet, Chris, to watch a full year of football. And, you know, I like my break, and then I love my CFL, as you know, so I got my respite there, but because I'm conditioned to watch hockey a long season. I'm conditioned to watch basketball when the Celtics are good. I'm conditioned to watch baseball, and I think my Reds are actually going to be pretty good this year because you're conditioned to watch those long seasons. I'm not sure I'm conditioned enough to watch the XFL. So I know it's a long, convoluted answer I gave you, but that's just how I see it.
Yeah, and just take that a half step further, Zig. It doesn't become oversaturation of football because the NFL now is pretty much, and Bob mentioned this earlier, you know, a 365-day thing. Everything that, you know, things that we didn't used to have much purview into, like the combine, you know, the draft over an entire weekend, and then the OTAs and it's a full year thing. Could we be in oversaturation?
Well, then don't tell my superiors at NFL Radio that. No, I'm just kidding. Because we think we cover the NFL the best of any outlet that there is. But I get what you're saying.
You do.
That. You know, we appreciate that. And I don't think we're covering, if you will, the XFL. But we've conditioned our listeners now, and this is why I love actually doing the shows in the off season. It's the challenge now of building those rosters. And yeah, there is more interest now in the combine and the draft and everything like that. So I guess if you're a casual fan, you'll watch a game or two of this XFL, but you're gonna be realizing this isn't the NFL, and it's not gonna have a landmark merger like the AFL and NFL did in the 60s, or be like the USFL, which I thought was a legitimate competition to the NFL in the 80s and had the occupant at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue now not move the league to the fall. I think the USFL could have stayed and done some big-time damage. So it's not that type of competition where you would actually watch a few games here and there.
Bob, one more for Zig before we let him go?
Sure, I'll throw one more NFL thing at you, Zig, since we brought this up earlier, too, and I think it's a fascinating topic, and that's the Cleveland Browns. As you know, coming into this past season, Zig, some people thought they had the Super Bowl talent, which they might have had, but we didn't know too much about Freddie Kitchens or anything else. Fast forward, everything, Zig, 6-10, nightmare, got a few knuckleheads on the team, loose cannons. Now they bring in Stefanski as a head coach, Joe Woods as a coordinator. Is this finally the regime that can actually clean this up? Or what do you see for the next few years about this? Because Chris and I have no idea where this can go right now.
Well, yeah, that makes three of us. But in all seriousness, I mean, that was a situation there where there was half the building in Cleveland, and I've confirmed this with some people I know. They wanted Stefanski over the guy they fired, Freddie Kitchens. So I guess the second time hopefully is the charm because they like his creativity and like his people skills and everything like that. I think they've got themselves a gem for a GM in Andrew Berry. Scott Pioli and I had him on this year. He's friends with Scott, and I've been told that he is a very, very sharp individual, really good evaluator. And don't let the sort of soft-spoken demeanor fool you. He can make some hard decisions. So they might have their guy to run this thing. And then, obviously, Myles Garrett, let's hope he's been repentant and, sorry for what he did. He appears to be. I know last night doing the show with the Hall of Famer Bill Polian, who knows him rather well. He's articulate young man. Good parents and everything like that. It was very uncharacteristic. So let's just hope that it was, sort of that one time it all snapped scenario and that he's able to, get his path back going the way that he should in terms of dominating. The whole thing to that is they got to rein in, OBJ, Jarvis Landry. They're talented, but sometimes it almost appeared as if the inmate, the players were running the operation. I got to watch my wording here, but it just seemed as though things got out of hand, and maybe Baker instead of doing all these commercials and all these gigs and everything like that. Maybe he just needs to focus on football and be the leader that they want him to be.
He is Zig Fracassi, one of the greatest radio show hosts in the history of broadcasting. If you think I'm exaggerating, you've never listened to one of his shows, go check him out on Sirius XM. You're going to see what I'm talking about. Zig, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the show. Always a privilege having you here.
Chris and Bob, you guys, like I've said on several occasions, when you had Lynn Cain on, Tony Collins, they may not be the biggest names of all time, but the hardcore fan remembers them. And it's some of these guys that kind of get a little bit lost in the shuffle, and that they had productive careers and probably productive lives after football. And what you and Bob do, it's phenomenal. I'm honored to be on with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, Zig.
You're the best, my friend. Take care. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to catching up soon.
Anytime.
See you, Zig.
Anytime. Thank you.
Good night, Zig.
That's a great Zig Fracassi, Bob. Every time he comes on is as insightful a guy about the game of football and hockey as you're going to find anywhere.
Oh, yeah, Chris. Again, we didn't throw any basketball and things like that, but he's an overall sports fan. But as you can see, he does his homework and been such a good friend to us for so long. And I really look forward to talking to Zig. Anytime you have a TNT Hall of Famer, and we had two of them tonight, it's a special show, Chris. So that was fun. I mean, Zig is Zig.
Indeed, he's fantastic. All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on our Thursday night tailgate spotlight on the positive. Hear two more great stories about guys out there doing great things in their communities, and we'll do that on the other side of this real quick station break.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
And we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate and turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who you putting your spotlight on tonight?
Tonight, Chris, I want to shout out to Justin Simmons, the safety for the Denver Broncos. Of course, he was their Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee this year, Chris. And I looked at his bio on the NFL Man of the Year, the page, and I don't think I've ever seen anything longer than his bio. It has nothing to do with him as a player. It's about the things he's done. He's only been in the league 4 or 5 years, Chris, has played very well for Denver, but has immersed himself such into that community out in Colorado that it's just mind-boggling. I was doing some math. I mean, at one point, he has volunteered for no less than 16 different community organizations. Just a few of them, I'll throw them out there. They're the Boys and Girls Clubs of Denver, Children's Hospital of Colorado, the Denver Rescue Mission. He's very big with the food bank of the Rockies, Chris. You'll often see him serving meals and gathering food for people. Very big with the Global Down Syndrome Association, Habitat for Humanity, Make-A-Wish, United Way. I can keep going. Special Olympics. It's amazing how this guy gets around. I never saw a guy spread his time among so many things, but has been very big. Again, back to the hunger thing. Has been so much things in the greater metro area. The Denver Rescue Mission, again, he's done a lot in schools. He donated a lot of his own money in the form of school grants for kids, student-led teams to make a difference in communities. He's done arts and crafts things at schools, and is very big with pediatric oncology patients, Chris. He visits cancer centers, especially at the Children's Hospital of Colorado. Again, I could keep going. I mean, I haven't even touched on this guy. It's amazing to me. I'm not going to say it's amazing he didn't win the award, because all of these guys are so deserving. But I encourage anyone, see, if you have any doubts about what these guys are doing, and it's not all about the knuckleheads you read in the news, look up on NFL.com under the Man of the Year section, Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos, safety. Great player, but what he does off field, Chris, will always trump his efforts on the field. Great man, Justin Simmons.
Absolutely. You want to talk about a guy doing it in all kinds of different places. Kudos to him, Bob. Good story. Tonight, in honor of having Zig with us, I'm going to cross over to hockey and put my spotlight on the Penguins' newly acquired winger, Jason Zucker. And Bob, remember earlier this year, we recognized Minnesota Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph for the Kyle Rudolph end zone that he helped to fund and build at the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. Well, inside of that end zone, Jason Zucker, who came over from the Minnesota Wild, that's where he was playing, he funded an 800-square-foot locker room and broadcast studio. He personally donated $160,000 to get it started. And it's a place where kids can go and they can laugh and relax and have some fun. Plus, there's a state-of-the-art broadcast studio that they put in there that they can produce and host their own shows at. And those shows range from music request hours to game shows to celebrity visits who come and sit down and do interviews, particularly guys from the Wild. Zucker and his wife, Carly, who he credits for coming up with the idea, have pledged $1,600 for every goal that Jason scores this season to go back and go and continue to fund the locker room. And it's named in honor of a young boy named Tucker Hellstrom, and it's called Tucker's Team Locker. Tucker was a patient at the hospital. He had a rare form of bone cancer, and Jason was his favorite player. And during visits during the 2016 year, Jason, of course, would visit all the kids, but he and Tucker became close. They had a special relationship, and he would spend time with Tucker. And very sadly, in July of that year, Tucker passed away. He was just 9 years old. But Jason has kept Tucker's legacy growing through the locker room and through the studio. And Jason's number 16, and he has a crowdfund site where you can go on. We encourage everyone to go on there. And he's asking people to donate to, continuing up with the things going on there at the hospital and make donations in multiples of 16, since that's his number. He's also partnering with a company that has a website, unrl.co, so C-O, and it's hashtag Give16 campaign to raise money. And you can go online to, again, the site, unrl.co, and they've got a lot of great stuff on there and that Jason is sponsoring. They've got the hashtag Give16 hats that you can buy on there. And again, proceeds go back to the hospital. Jason is signing some of those, so there's a limited edition number of autographed hats. But the hat styles are fantastic, and they've got 16 different ones, so one a week. They're coming out there, so the hats are available for a limited time. I went out there tonight and got myself one because it looks fantastic. And I'm going to continue to check that site weekly and hopefully get in there early enough to get Jason to sign one for me. But like I say, please go online and check it out. Give what you can to help the kids that are out there battling cancer. Help them, give them a fun place to go, a place that they can be themselves, relax, get in the studio, and forget about the things that they are dealing with for a while. It's a wonderful cause. He and his wife Carly, Jason and Carly Zucker, wonderful people, great player, but wonderful people, like you mentioned a moment ago, Bob. Stuff that happens on the ice with Jason doesn't trump what he's doing away from the ice and what he's doing to help kids have a better life and be able to have some fun dealing with some horrible things. But he's helping to give them an outlet there in the hospital. So I thought that was a wonderful story.
It is, Chris, and wow, what a wonderful way to end the show. And I know you and I will be keeping our eyes on stories like this over the next few months because, again, we say it all the time. We don't read about this. It's up to you and I and people like ourselves to bring it out because the stuff that sells is the bad stuff that you're going to find online. You got to dig a little, which we will gladly do to come up with these stories to put smiles on people's faces. But kudos to these guys tonight. These two guys are just very special individuals, as are every guy we feature and women that we feature at this spot in every show we do. So I'm sure with all the shows we continue to do, we'll end it with this because there's no other better way to do it.
Yeah, couldn't agree with that statement more. Always go out on a positive note. And there are a lot of guys. There are more athletes, guys and gals in their respective sports that are doing great stuff out there in the communities than there are the knuckleheads. But we know the knuckleheads are always the thing that grab the headlines, and that's not the way it should be. We should be celebrating the folks that are out there doing great stuff and ignoring the knuckleheads. And that's what we do on this show And that's why we love doing the Spotlight on the Positive every single week. All right, Bob, time to put a bow on this season of Thursday Night Tailgate. We want to send out our thanks to Tony Collins, Lynn Cain, and Zig Fracassi for joining us tonight. And as always, Bob, I can't thank you enough for being here and being in the co-host chair with me, doing this show all the time. Another great season, and you're fantastic, my friend. Couldn't and wouldn't want to do it without you.
Well, what can I say, Chris? I was doing a little math during the week. I believe you and I have probably done 500 shows together, give or take, baseball, football, and golf-related ones. And the fact that we're still doing them is something that I truly take pride in, and I'm very thankful for. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to work with many people over the past 20 years or so, but I've definitely worked with you the most. And I think there's a reason for that. Number one, it works. And number two, it's very, very and beyond enjoyable. And I want to thank you for the quality of shows you produce, you know, your professionalism, and just for the opportunity to co-host with you for so long. I don't know if we have another 500 shows in the tank, Chris, but I think I speak for the two of us in saying that we're going to give it our best shot. And I know we'll probably do some golf shows together before we talk football again, Chris, but I just want to thank you again for another great season, for being a terrific friend, and just for being the best co-host that an old New Englander could ever ask for.
I appreciate you saying that very much. That means a great deal to me. Yeah, and like I say, you know, we've got the golf show teed up, and it's going to get kicked off next week. Next on the Tee, go online, nextonthetee.net, check it out, and see who the guest schedule is. And I hope, Bob, we do get the opportunity to do a few on that side as well. And in between now and then, my friend, you know, take it all in, right? We rest up, we recharge the batteries, and we'll be back here on Thursday Night Tailgate probably in late August to get ready for another NFL season and our 9th year doing the show. Folks, we hope you'll continue to follow us on social media. On Twitter, you can find, in Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari. The show is at TNT Podcast. Visit us on Facebook. Both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages, plus we got a page for the show as well, Thursday Night Tailgate. Always, we ask you to give us a like. That's very important to us. And, you know, our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. On there, we've got a handful of the most recent episodes, so you can click on any of those, and it'll take you back over to our page on Podbean. So there you can stream or download any of our archive episodes there. To Bob's point, we probably got close to 500 episodes on there, and we've got individual segments. So whether you've got 2 hours on your commute or 20 minutes to listen to a single episode or a single segment, we've got everything you need there over on Podbean. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Google Podcasts. You can find us on radio.com. We're all over the net. So we continue to thank you for listening and being the best part of what we do. And we look forward to season number 9 a few months from now. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Okay, Chris, we'll talk soon. And speaking of thanks, we want to throw thanks out to our great announcer all year long, Joe LaGenusa, who does such a great job with our intro and ads. We also want to thank Kyle Turley and the Kyle Turley Band for the upcoming outro music. And on behalf of myself and Chris, we want to thank every one of those fans out there tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next season, good night, Kevin, Terry, and Rusty. We miss you guys.